Welcome to Buckeyes Tomorrow Morning for Monday, July 29th. I'm your host, Tom Orr. The Akron game in 33 days, the game against Michigan in 124 days. Fall camp starts on August 1st. Yes, football season is finally almost here in Columbus, Ohio. And that means it is time to have our old friend Brett Ciancia of Pick Six Previews on. Pick Six Previews is the book that I get. I buy it every year. I use it every year. I wear it out. I brought it with me. There it is. I brought it with me to Big Ten Media Days last week. And as I'm doing interviews with all these different media people, it's sort of my sanity check. What does Brett think about these teams? So I don't sound like an idiot because I don't cover all of these different teams. Brett covers it all. He absolutely owns the power conferences, which I don't know, Brett, I guess it's a little easier. There are fewer power conferences now. So did your job get any easier this year moving from a Power 5 to a Power 4? Or with all the transfer portal, did it just get even crazier than usual?
Yeah, well, thanks, Tom, for having me on. Thanks for the praise there. It's crunch time here at Pick Six Previews, and I'm excited to talk about this 2024 edition. Definitely the most change that I've ever seen. Now, it's my 13th season doing this. Most change, not just the super conference realignment, the expanded playoff bracket, all the transfer portal movement. You have Nick Saban retiring, and that sent off another domino effect of coaching carousel. Even in situations like Chip Kelly and Jeff Hafley demoting themselves from head coach to take coordinator roles. Fascinating time. So a lot to break down. And I know it's an exciting offseason in Columbus. It almost has the feel of Ohio State going all in, pushing all the chips into the table here and going title or bust.
Yeah, this is a time of year when everyone is always just like overflowing with excitement about the upcoming Ohio State football season. But I cannot think of very many over the last 30 years or so that have been quite like this in terms of the anticipation. There have been years in the past, after the 2002 national championship, there was a big expectation for 2003. After the 2014 season, there were big expectations for 2015. This year, there is not a defending national champion. They are looking, they are hungry, they have not won since 2014, and boy, it feels like they are very much a national championship contender this year, but there are plenty of other teams standing in their way in the expanded 12-team college football playoff. I wanted to start right there at the top. It feels like Georgia 1, Ohio State 2 is more or less an industry consensus, broadly speaking, and that's where you have those teams as well. It feels like there are not a ton of flaws on either of those rosters. What is it to you that sets Georgia and Ohio State? What sets the Bulldogs just a little bit ahead of Ohio State right now?
Yeah, well, I think they've emerged as the two super teams for this year, and Georgia has done it consistently from the high school recruiting level, stacking number one overall high school classes. I've been calling them the NFL's 33rd team. That's just been such a pro factory recently. And my game grader formula suggests last year they were still the number one team. I know that they did not complete their three-peat of national titles, but had that been an expanded bracket, an 8-team or a 12-teamer, I think my money still would have been on Georgia to go take home that title. So, and they bring a lot back. This is something where amongst these dynasty programs, and you're familiar with this with Ohio State, you cycle through your star players so quickly because they leave early for the pros. So returning production and returning starter numbers are usually low at these programs. Georgia brings almost everybody back. It's fascinating. So I think Georgia's the clear number one, right there, 1A, 1B with Ohio State, who similarly brings back so much on that defense. Guys could have gone pro or transferred, and they were able to retain a lot of star players. The question's at quarterback, but everywhere else they really hit the transfer portal hard. With some headliners, Judkins in the backfield, Caleb Downs, one of the best freshmen and safeties in the country. So it looks like they're going all in, like I said at the top. And the Chip Kelly hire also signals that they're going all in on this, and it's going to be an exciting season.
So the national championship race is not the only really exciting championship race that Ohio State is going to be a part of this year. The top of the Big Ten is loaded as well. You have the top of the Big Ten as number 1, Ohio State, number 2, Oregon, number 3, Penn State, number 4, Michigan, number 5, Iowa. I have seen places that have Michigan ahead of Penn State. I'm with you. I think Penn State is probably a little better than Michigan right now. Michigan just has so much to replace on the offensive side of the ball. But again, Ohio State and the Oregon Ducks, they are two teams that could play twice, potentially even 3 times this year. How do you see the two of them matching up? Because you have Oregon 3 overall in the country. So this is, again, not a thing where there's a clear-cut top and second team in the Big Ten. So how do you see that matchup shaking out, at least the first time and maybe the second and third times they play this year?
Yeah, well, with Oregon, they're the best of the newcomers coming in. And to Big Ten and Ohio State fans, you might have a certain image in your head of Oregon from 10, 15 years ago, the Chip Kelly teams, where they were all about speed and the quirky offense and some gadget offense plays when they were really dominating in the Pac-10 back then. This is built differently. This is built from the trenches out. This was from Mario Cristobal, the last head coach. He's great at developing offensive lines. And then Dan Lanning has continued that and really elevated their recruiting profile. So back in the day, they were usually around the 20th mark for recruiting. But now, Oregon, the only team in the country to stack consecutive top 10 high school classes and top 10 transfer classes. So they're doing it in both ways. This roster is really loaded everywhere. The one question I had for them was losing Bo Nix. But then the next day, they went out and backfilled that with Dylan Gabriel, a guy from, he started at Oklahoma, could have been a Heisman contender there in late October. Before cooling off a little bit and battling an injury. But so they reloaded at the one big question mark I had. It's one of the best offensive lines in the country and a tough defense. So I think they're poised to transition well into the Big Ten.
Yeah, I got a chance to talk to Dylan Gabriel a little bit last week at Big Ten Media Days. A very, very impressive kid. Well, I call him a kid, and this is at least his sixth year of college football, so I think he can probably legally rent a car at this point. But yeah, he was very impressive. They also got Dante Moore out of UCLA, who is, probably maybe the second best transfer quarterback in the portal. He is probably more of a next year project for them. But yeah, they definitely reloaded it at that quarterback position and several other spots around the field as well. In terms of, you look at Ohio State's schedule, Ohio State does not have a great non-conference schedule. Okay, let me rephrase that. Ohio State has a bad non-conference schedule this year. But they do have the top four teams in the Big Ten, other than them, on their schedule at Oregon, at Penn State, home for Michigan, home for Iowa. Where do you think this team, when you look at some of the other schedules around the country, I think it's very easy for people to focus on the non-conference and say, oh, that's going to be terrible. That's a terrible non-conference and that should be held against them. Where do you see the top four teams on this Ohio State schedule, Oregon, Penn State, Michigan, Iowa, finishing? Is this a team, an Ohio State team that you would expect when they're doing those college football playoff ranking shows later in the season to have potentially 3 to 4 ranked wins and be able to sort of hold up a resume against a Georgia or someone else at the top of the polls?
Yeah, so the non-conference will be slighted, but I think when you look at those conference opponents, it's a tough draw. It's the top four in the league, like you mentioned, and this year is different because I'm used to the Big Ten West and Big Ten East, where you have a predictable pool of opponents. Now this year I had to make this huge map on paper and grid out who's all playing who. It's like calculus, but yeah, Ohio State got a tough draw. Others got easier ones, like Iowa gets an easy draw. Nebraska slightly easier, but yeah, in terms of Ohio State's draw, that's 3 of the top 12 teams in my poll there. Oregon number 3, Penn State number 7, Michigan 12th, and then you can tack on Iowa there at 20th. So 4 top 20 teams as it stands right now. That's impressive enough. They're going to have to earn it, though, with 2 of those being on the road. Penn State is going to be an electric atmosphere, albeit it should have been the whiteout, but because of Big Fox, that's now at noon. Still, it'll be great. I almost wonder if it's really a one-game season in terms of the importance of this Michigan game. And I don't have to harp to you guys about this. I'm sure you're all over it, but I can't imagine him losing 4 straight to Michigan, especially with the temperature in the room rising after the Michigan national title. So the pressure is definitely on November 30th. You got to get that W and then see where it shakes out in the playoff.
Yeah, if Georgia loses an early game, and they could lose to Alabama or Clemson, that Ohio State-Oregon game could be a 1-2 game, one of the biggest regular season games in the last decade or so in the Big Ten, and it might not be the biggest or most important win on Ohio State's schedule, or win to get on Ohio State's schedule, because, yeah, there have been plenty of angry leftover Thanksgiving sandwiches made in the state of Ohio the last 3 years. So I think they would everyone in the Woody Hayes Athletic Center is well aware of the importance of winning on Thanksgiving weekend this year. Your book is number 1 in preseason accuracy as ranked by Stasson.com. That's something that you have had on your cover for a number of years because it has remained true for a number of years. So I'm always interested in where you're a little bit different from the industry consensus, because your book has traditionally done better than the industry consensus. So what's one team that you're maybe higher on than a lot of the national sources right now? Is there a team that you think is maybe going to be better than the sort of industry consensus?
Yeah, I have a couple, and thanks for bringing it up. It's definitely a point of pride for me as a one-man show. When they're keeping score like they do at Stasson.com, I want to go win the thing. So, 10-year title. I want to continue that this year. So I try to avoid all the other predictions until I'm locked in with mine. And then once I hit publish, then I really catch up. I love reading everybody else's too and catching up. So now that I've had a chance to do that after mine's been published, I think Miami looks like my big shock pick of the year. I have them winning the ACC outright, placing 10th, but in the new bracket, that would still be 4th because they would be the 4th Power 5 champ. With Miami and the ACC, it looks like it's a 3-team race between Florida State, last year's champion, Clemson, and Miami. First, with those first two, Florida State, I'm impressed with Mike Norvell. I called for them to win the league last year, which hit, but they lost so many guys to the pros. They're going through a little bit of a roster reload, recycle. So I think they're going to take a couple losses. Clemson, I no longer view as a dynasty program. They were for quite some time. You would just pencil them in to win the ACC every year, and you'd be right. Now, I think their ignorance of the transfer portal, I think, has really limited their potential. So I don't see them winning it. So it's wide open. I landed on Miami, and I'm really impressed with their talent acquisition from the high school ranks under Mario Cristobal, consecutive top 10 classes. And then the transfer portal, too. They brought in Cam Ward, great quarterback upgrade for them from Washington State. Damian Martinez, another probably the top running back right there with Judkins in the whole portal from Oregon State. So, it's a strong team, better than their record showed last year. My numbers suggest that. This was more like a 9 or a 10 win team last year, but had a bad quarterback injury and bad performance down the stretch. So they can get past some of the in-game coaching, like taking a knee when you're supposed to. That has cost them several times now. It's crazy, but they're my pick. I think that's somewhat of a sleeper nationally.
Well, I'm glad you said it. I thought I don't want to say something mean about Mario Cristobal now after he's saying so many nice things. I have said plenty of mean things about Mario Cristobal over the years, including things about when he should have taken a knee and chose not to. So I'm glad you did that for me, and I didn't have to be the bad guy there. Now I'm going to let you be the bad guy. Let's hit the flip side here. What is one team that you're maybe a little lower on than the industry consensus?
Oh, I'll tell you, I'm not making many friends in Columbia, Missouri this year. I'm definitely selling Missouri, and this is a team Ohio State fans are familiar with because of the Cotton Bowl. I was really impressed with them last year. It was a banner season for Missouri, 11 wins. Their offense was really dynamic. They were airing it out vertically. Had I think an All-American running back with Schrader. And almost all of that, except for Schrader, returns on offense. So I think they'll be strong there. My big questions and why I have them lower than anybody in the industry is because of the defense. And they lose so many star players to the pros. And their ace coordinator, Blake Baker, a guy I've gotten to talk to several off seasons now, his blitz-heavy, aggressive scheme, he was plucked by LSU. LSU came in and gave him the biggest contract for a coordinator in college football history, some $2.5 million. So they took the brains of the operation out of there on defense, a lot of star power gone, and in such a tough conference, so top-heavy, I had them sliding down the ladder a bit.
So this is the first year of the 12-team playoff, and there's a lot of uncertainty. I mean, you mentioned some of the setup and the top 4 conference champions get the top 4 seeds. So yeah, Miami might be 10th, but they're going to get one of those 4 first-round buys. So I think there's a lot of stuff that people are not used to thinking about, not used to projecting. When you look at this year's 12-team college football field, what it could be, outside of, let's just take, the Georgia, Ohio State, Oregon, Texas off the table. Feels like those are kind of the 4 teams that people are sort of projecting as, in a lot of cases, the final 4. Who else? Is there another team that you could see maybe making a little bit of a Cinderella run in the first year of the 12-team playoff?
Yeah, well, there's definitely a couple wild cards here. I think Notre Dame is going to make the bracket just on their schedule alone. And in the past, Notre Dame would have had to go undefeated to make it in the 4-team bracket. Now they definitely have 1 mulligan, maybe even 2 mulligans the way this thing is setting up. And I think they're going to go 11-1 and host a home game in South Bend, Indiana, which would be really cool for the sport. So maybe them. Ole Miss is a real dark horse. This is a program that is never considered nationally, never considered for playoff runs. But the portal king, as he calls himself, Lane Kiffin, he has dominated the transfer portal recruiting. Top 2 classes the last 3 years in transfer. So he's closed the gap with his peers in the SEC there. I think they're going to host a game in Oxford. And then from there, I mean, can I call Alabama a dark horse? I mean, it sounds like when Nick Saban retired, it's almost like the national media and kind of just the fans at large, everybody, we all just figured, okay, Bama's done. That whole thing is over. But now when the dust has settled a little bit, this is still a 5-star packed program, and Kalen DeBoer is a proven head coach. So although it's still the Alabama brand, they might be being slept on a little bit.
A dark elephant out of Tuscaloosa. All right, I will allow it with the departure of Nick Saban. It's not quite the Alabama of recent years. So yeah, that's another interesting one. Last thing I want to ask you about: you are a voter for the Heisman Trophy. Well, who are some guys that you're watching as people who might get to make that trip to New York in December?
Yeah, well, we actually touched on a couple throughout the show. I really think Dylan Gabriel up at Oregon has a nice shot because they're going to be a top contender and he's going to put up great stats. Carson Beck, for the same reasons at Georgia, he'll be the figurehead of what we think is the number one team in the country. I would throw Jackson Dart in there from Ole Miss, just given the offense that Kiffin runs. And if they were to put together a special season, it would be because of their quarterback play. Who else we have here? Maybe a Cam Ward if the Miami pick holds. That one seems like more of a long shot, but could happen. An even more longer shot from a non-playoff team could be Nico, the five-star quarterback at Tennessee, leading one of the most dynamic offenses, Josh Heupel's offense, and now he finally has a five-star arm there. But the running back thing, you tend to look at just the quantity stats, like if a guy can go for 2,000 yards. Ohio State might have the two best backs in the country, but they're gonna take each other's carries away from each other. Same deal at Penn State, two great backs. So I don't see a Heisman contender from those backfields. If you had to make a running back pick, it might be Ollie Gordon from Oklahoma State. He's going to get his 1,500, maybe even 2,000 yards, workhorse back. So that's where I would land there. If you need a real X factor, maybe Luther Burden from Missouri. I know I just got done fading Missouri, but if they prove me wrong as a team and they go 11-1 or something, it'll be because Luther Burden went crazy. So those are some names to consider.
Yeah, Missouri's schedule is not particularly stout this year, so they could sneak in there just based on a little bit of a softer schedule, and Ohio State fans saw plenty of Luther Burden, both during the recruiting process and during the Cotton Bowl last year. All right, I have said plenty of nice things about Brett and the Pick Six book. Brett, let people know where they can get it and where they can find you on Twitter.
Yeah, well, thanks so much for the praise and for having me. It's one of my favorite annual stops. I love catching up with you and Buckeye Huddle. Best of luck this year to the Buckeyes. A lot of respect for your fan base and your program. Pick6previews.com is the only place to get the book. On there, we have sample pages. We have some testimonials from the College Game Day guys. You can see we have the digital copy again, but also the hard copy edition again, like Tom just showed on camera. And you get the choice of both. If you buy the hard copy, you get both options. So pick6previews.com.
All right. Well, again, make sure you go to pick6previews.com. I am not kidding. It is definitely one thing that I lean on very heavily as I'm preparing for the season to talk to all these players and coaches at Media Days last week and for what is going to be one of the most unpredictable college football seasons of all time. Going to be something we're looking forward to very much, and it should be a really fun season. So make sure you check out Brett's book, Pick Six Previews. All right. That will do it for today. Thank you guys all for joining us. Have a great day. We'll talk to you tomorrow.